My trip to Malaysia in 2009 put Australia's anxiety about a trickle of boat people into perspective. Back then, there were already 49,000 registered refugees here. Now there are more than 94,000. 90% have fled from Myanmar or Burma. Of the rest, most are from Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran and Sri Lanka. They're assessed and then registered by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. But the UNHCR can provide very little real protection in Malaysia. It's a point that won't be lost on the 800 asylum seekers Australia will send here.
Once you get your card, there is a phone number at the back which starts from 012. Okay, it's at the back of your card, all right?
I filmed these Burmese refugees collecting the cards that prove their claims have been recognised by the UNHCR. But their status as refugees isn't recognised under Malaysian law. They're considered to be illegal immigrants.
012 is a detention hotline. It's open from 8 a.m. in the morning up to 11 p.m. at night, 7 days a week. And this is the number that you call if you have any problems with the authorities. Number 3 and number 4.
So what's in store for the 800 asylum seekers that Australia plans to send here? In 2009, I found several Tamil families crowded into a few tiny rooms. They'd been in Malaysia for 18 months after fleeing the conflict in Sri Lanka. But the families were vulnerable here too. As illegal immigrants, they weren't allowed to work and the children couldn't go to school. They also lived in constant fear of being arrested.
அதை கொண்டு போய் எங்களை பிடிச்சி உள்ளே போட்டால் பிள்ளைகள் வீட்டில் தனிங்க நாங்கள் ஜெயிலில் இருந்தால் பிள்ளைகள் என்ன பாடம் தெரியாது அந்த பயத்தில் வலிக்கிட்டா அப்படி எல்லாரும் ஃபேமிலியாக போயிட்டு ஃபேமிலியாக வீட்டுக்கு வரணும் ஒரு பிள்ளை இருக்குது கொண்டு போக முடியாது அப்படி ஒன்று நடந்துட்டா ஜெயிலில் போய் பிள்ளைகள் எல்லாம் வச்சு கொண்டு வந்து கஷ்டப்படணும் அதால தான் பயப்படுறோம் அதுக்கு தான் பயம்.
For more than a year, the families had lived in a state of self-imposed house arrest. I asked Malaysia's Deputy Home Affairs Minister about their plight.
Many refugees I've met describe being harassed by the police, forced to pay bribes, sometimes threatened with having their UNHCR cards confiscated. Have you heard these allegations? Are these allegations being investigated?
There's no report made. If there is a report made, of course our official will do investigation on the matter.
But the UNHCR says it has raised these complaints with you. So have many other human rights groups.
But as far as we are concerned, we have not received any complaint.
Even more than the police, this is whom refugees in Malaysia truly fear. Rela is a militia made up of 500,000 volunteers. After just 2 days training, the government uses them to crack down on illegal immigrants. In 2009, I was invited to film a surprise raid after midnight on an immigrant neighbourhood. The volunteers were told to be on their best behaviour.
Saya minta Ketua Platoon KPM tentukan anggota-anggota tidak ada yang melakukan kekasaran. Jangan pergi pukul ke, tendang ke. Bawa dia dengan elok. Bawa macam bawa girlfriend tu.
Rella has been condemned in the past for human rights abuses, but seemed happy for me to tag along. Malaysia has more than 1 million illegal immigrants and believes tough measures are necessary. The volunteers spread out and started going from door to door looking for migrants. If they were too slow, an officer could authorise the use of force. Their job is to take anyone who's not Malaysian outside to have their documents checked. At this stage, it didn't matter if they were here legally or not. No one liked being woken up in the middle of the night.
Jalan betul-betul, jangan emergency jalan. Jalan betul-betul, jangan emergency.
Out on the street, their documents were taken and examined by officers from the Immigration Department. They decided who should be arrested and who got to go back to bed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Although refugees are also illegal immigrants, the government insists they are not arrested or detained.
Have you found anyone here who has a UNHCR card?
No, we obviously we release them.
You release the people with the UNHCR
Yes,
card?
yes.
The UNHCR says fewer refugees are being picked up these days, but that it's still happening. Most that I spoke to said they had a friend or relative who'd been arrested. When the prisoners were taken back to Rella headquarters, I discovered that tonight was no exception.
Where are you from?
I'm from Myanmar.
Contrary to what I'd been told, 6 of the men here had been arrested despite being registered as refugees.
You have a UNHCR card?
Yeah, sure. I until already 5 years.
And you've given them the card?
Yes, sure. My name is Abdurrahim. Number card 03C13837. Just so many problems coming here, and I tell you so many price. This people is very not good. Tell me like animals. I know, understand. Why I don't know.
Abdul Rahim had tried to call the UNHCR detention hotline, but it was the middle of the night and it was closed.
So what will happen if you can't get hold of them at the office?
I don't know about this. I know now. I know good feeling.
Hello, where's your document?
Okay already.
Okay.
Yes, in front of.
Come here. Okay.
Sir, just tell me what happens if your men do find someone with a UNHCR card. What is the procedure?
So the immigration asks us to detain them. Then we have to bring them to the immigration depot. We're going to bring them to depot. Lengging.
The detention centre?
Yes.
This is where Abdul Rahim and all the others would be taken, the Lenggeng Immigration Depot outside Kuala Lumpur. This was the first time Malaysia had allowed a foreign journalist to film inside one of its detention centres. Back then, there were more than 1,400 prisoners squeezed inside. There are 500 now, with many transferred to detention centres elsewhere in Malaysia to ease the overcrowding.
As you can see now, actually they are not comfortable inside here. Not really comfortable.
The food is very out of, I don't know, determined. If the dog see the food, the dog cannot eat. A dog see this food, they cannot eat it.
Have you seen the tray, the food, the tray we eat? We go and see, you know.
See this? You see this? You see this? You see this?
Each prisoner got some rice and a couple of pieces of meat and vegetable. The stench was awful.
Hi. Hey, man. You want to take out this one?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello? Come.
This is Shanmulingam. He's a Tamil who said he'd fled Sri Lanka because the army wanted to arrest him.
Have you gone to the UNHCR at all? Have you claimed asylum?
He said he's been here for 6 weeks and he was waiting for the UNHCR to organise his release. And this is Prabhakaran. He'd been here for a month and was also registered as a refugee. He was nervous about speaking in front of the immigration officers.
How have you found life in Malaysia as a refugee?
என்ன பயந்து தான் வாழணும் ஊர்லேயும் பயந்து தான் வாழ்ந்தோம் இங்கே வந்து பயந்து தான் வாழணும் எப்போ பிடிக்குது என்ன நடக்குது ஒன்றுமே தெரியல வந்து இப்போ ஒரு மாதம் ஒரு முடியுமே இல்லை அப்படியே இருக்கலாம்.
When I visited the immigration detention centre, I found several refugees there who had UNHCR cards.
I don't think so.
I did, and the UNHCR confirms this. And in fact, the immigration officials also confirmed this.
That's what the information I've been given by my personnel.
That there are no refugees being held in the detention centres. That's what you've been told.
Yes.
Well, I think it shows very clearly the disconnect between what is happening in the senior bureaucracy in Malaysia and what is actually happening on the ground. When they're dealing with 1 million illegal foreign workers, you know, for them to even worry about 90,000 refugees, you know, it's not even on their radar, and that's where the problem will be.
The UNHCR tells me the situation has improved in the past couple of years and it can get refugees out of detention faster, but it can't prevent them from ending up here in the first place. And in a country that routinely canes illegal immigrants, things can get even worse. Last year, Amnesty International interviewed 27 Burmese refugees who'd been caned for immigration offences.
Our report highlighted that a number of recognised refugees were caned. They're brought before these courts, which are actually attached to the detention centre. The guards are telling them, just plead guilty, it's your best way to get out of here. And within a matter of minutes, they've been sentenced by a judge to judicial caning. And this is something that we witnessed firsthand.
The Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, says Malaysia has undertaken to treat asylum seekers sent from Australia with dignity and respect and in accordance with human rights standards. How comfortable are you with that assurance?
Well, we have very real concerns around that assurance because, again, the level of control that the senior bureaucracy in Malaysia has over the militias that are rounding people up and the level of transparency that occurs once somebody is rounded up and ends up in a detention centre is virtually non-existent.
This will mean that our humanitarian intake increases.
Australia's Minister for Immigration, Chris Bowen, wouldn't agree to give Dateline an interview or provide direct answers to emailed questions. But in a written statement he said,
"This new policy is about breaking the people smugglers' business model. The message is a very clear one. Don't get on that boat."
Many refugees I met in 2009 said it's conditions like these in Malaysia that drive people to try to reach Australia.
சாப்பிட மாட்டோம் நாங்களும் ஏதோ பார்த்து படிக்கிறது தான் வேணும் கடலுக்காக நாங்கள் தப்பியாவது அங்கால போய் நாங்கள் நிம்மதியாக உழைச்சி சாப்பிடணும் ரெண்டு தான் நாங்கள் இப்போ ஆஸ்திரேலியா சனம் போகிறோன்னு தான் நாங்களும் எல்லாரும் படிக்கிடுவோம்ன்ற முடிவும் இருக்கும் கொஞ்சம் காலம் போக இப்படி இருந்தோன்னு செய்யலாது நாங்கள்.
But 800 unlucky asylum seekers who risk the dangerous sea voyage will soon be driven back to Malaysia. The Australian government has vowed to cut off the only real escape route they have.
If someone seeks to come to Australia, then they are at risk of going to Malaysia and going to the back of the queue.
The queue does not exist, and I think for the government to try and keep peddling what is an appalling myth about refugee protection is really dangerous when you think about where we are sending these people to.